Hello, it is Jack Gill, and welcome to Anfield Agenda. I apologise that we are 15 minutes or so late. That is entirely my fault. Joe has been waiting patiently for the last 15 minutes with Connor. I have had so many Wi-Fi issues. It's been an absolute joke, to be honest with you. But anyway, nonetheless, you don't want me to bore you with all that stuff. We'll get into all the content ahead of today's video. I'm delighted to be joined by Joe Wayman from All Leeds TV today. In the past, you've probably seen on Monday Sports Show that I've been joined by Joe a lot. Joe is a guy that I am very fond of, a big Leeds fan, someone who is very, very good in the community of fan media. And Joe, we've got lots to talk about today, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, mate. Yeah, first of all, I'm I'm no longer on All Leeds TV. I have my own channel now, Just Joe Football Show. Just get that in there. But yeah, we've got loads to talk about, mate. I'm looking forward to it. First real big game. I know Everton are a big-ish side, but this is the first real top six side. We've had it at Ellen Road in the Premier League with fans in the ground, mate. So I'm buzzing for that. It's going to be amazing tomorrow.
I think that's the thing. So for me, I don't want to underestimate Leeds. Leeds are a top side, and they missed last season. You missed last season with fans in the stadium, and this year you got your fans back. But this is the first real game, your first top game with fans at Ellen Road, and it's going to be a difficult fixture for Liverpool.
Yeah, I think we will play a big part throughout the season. I think the time the fixture is as well. I don't know. There'll be you can imagine a few Leeds fans on the ale and that between then and kick-off. So I think it's going to be quite a bouncing atmosphere, mate. And a difficult place for a lot of Premier League teams to come. It's one of the last, old English football grounds for me that can create a big atmosphere. So I think quite a few players might struggle in that atmosphere as well. So because you know yourself, a lot of the Premier League's been sanitised over the years that we've been out of it, to be fair. It's been a long, 16 years. So obviously there's going to be changes. But I seen something on Twitter earlier. There was a guy at the Arsenal game wearing an Arsenal shirt watching the Manchester United game to see Ronaldo. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. That's sanitisation. That's not on. If that was at Ellen Road, he'd be getting his phone took off him and told to leave, I think. Do you know what I mean? But that's what you get in today's modern football Twitter world, I think.
Well, I'm going to start, Joe, with the start of the week, and probably the main talking point from both sides this week is what's going on with the Brazilian side of things. And Rafinha, a big player for Leeds United, and for Liverpool, we were the main side hit by the Brazilian side of things, and we were missing. Obviously, Firmino's injured at the moment, but Fabinho, Alisson, key players for us. And the fact that they can both play tomorrow, and for you that Rafinha can play tomorrow, great news ahead of the game. It makes it more of a prospect, no?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think the ruling itself was a joke, and then we were hearing that Richarlison was going to be allowed to play because of good relations, basically, because he played at the Olympics. That's a madness, and it was like, well, you can't pick and choose a rule. You can't, make it say, well, let them have it and them not. At the end of the day as well, if you consider we're in a pandemic, then fair enough if it was normal. There's a case to answer. But the fact that, there's a pandemic going on, it was silly. And I think even though you'd have lost more players than us, I think it still would have impacted us more because Rafinha is that important to Leeds United, whereas you've got players that can come in. I think the only one, obviously, Alisson, Kelleher, I've not seen enough of him, but notoriously Liverpool, their second choices, it never goes down well, does it? But I still think we'd have been hit worse. But the fact that he's playing is huge for us because the only really thing when I look at Liverpool is your fullbacks. They are great fullbacks going forward. Trent, amazing. I'm not saying he's poor by any stretch of the imagination, but it is an area Leeds United can exploit. We've seen that in the first game last season when Jack Harrison, that ball in behind, and the fact that we will have Rafinha and Harrison in either wing, Dan James to call on. We need to make sure these wingers are firing because I think everywhere else we're going to struggle If I'm being honest, Jack, you're a far superior side than us and have started the season really well. So the fact that Rafinha's playing is huge for Leeds United.
Yeah, and I think from a Liverpool perspective, obviously it's difficult. There's a big divide surrounding Alice. Adrian. I think a lot of people are now starting to prefer Kelleher as our number two. A lot of people are confused about why Adrian was given that new contract in the summer, having been said that Keller was going to be our number two going forwards and that Adrian would probably be our number three. So the fact he was given a new contract is a big shock to us all as Liverpool fans. So I think there was a lot of question as to tomorrow as whether with Alisson not being available. I know it's changed now, but if Alisson wasn't available, then who would be the man that we rely on? Would it be Adrian or would it be Kelleher? And I think the majority of Liverpool fans would say Kelleher.
I know. It's Adrian. It's not had the best time, has he? To be honest, he was the guy that let in the 7 goals, right? And we all know what happened with Craig, man. It's YouTube like folklore, that stuff. Great. I mean, just notoriously, your second choice keepers always seem to mess it up for you, don't they? I forget the name of the guy in the Champions League final now. What was he called?
Karius.
Yeah.
So still, by the way, he's still on the books of Liverpool.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Listen, though, second choice keepers, they're second choice for a reason, aren't they? You don't want to be calling on them, really. Do you know what I mean? So it is what it is. But I guess that would have been the only positive. But I still think the loss of Rafinha would have been much bigger than that for Leeds anyway. I mean, what do you think, Jack? Were you thinking, at least there without Rafinha? And now do you think, or were you more thinking, I wanted Rafinha to play, so it's a better game?
Well, that was the thing for me. Like for me, it was like, yeah, we'd be out, we'd be without, Alisson and Fabinho. For me, are two focal points of the way we play, the system that Jurgen Klopp loves. But for me, with Leeds without Rafinha, that gave me a bit of like, okay, fair enough, because we know how important Rafinha is to Leeds. We are very fond of Rafinha. There's not a Liverpool fan out there that would tell you that they're not interested in bringing Rafinha into Liverpool. In recent weeks, it's been made very aware to us that we are interested in Rafinha. As Liverpool fans, we want to be interested in Rafinha because he's a top-class player and a player that would improve our squad so much. So, yeah, I think it's difficult because we know that we'd have been weakened by this rule, but we know that actually Leeds would have been weakened by this rule, and for your top player to be out, your best player to be out, I think would have definitely benefited us.
Yeah, for sure as well. Because I did a preview on my channel. I think the worrying thing for Leeds United was because we've brought in Dan James. We have a young winger by the name of Somerville on the bench. The previous 2 wingers have gone now. Costa's gone to Valencia. He was no good. But what that meant for me as a fan is Dan James, for me, wouldn't have played because although Bielsa said he'll be available, he's only trained for the first time today. Do you know what I mean? So there was no way he was going to get thrown straight in against Liverpool in a Bielsa system. Another manager would have gone, do you know what? Dan James, great winger, pace, he'll cause them problems. Let's throw him in there because Rafinha's out. But had Rafinha been out, I don't think Bielsa would do that because he needs to know the system. Somerville's never played for the first team yet. So it was like, we probably would have moved Stuart Dallas to right wing, which he was a winger when he first came at Leeds, but he's just not a great winger. That's why he never did well in that position until Bielsa came in and moved him round. But yeah, I'm so glad Rafinha's back because had he not been, I'd have been, this game's going to be tough enough as it is without, if Rafinha's missing, then it's even tougher,
I want to talk about Dan James a bit, and I know this is a Liverpool channel and mostly the people that are tuning into this probably don't care. But for me, I tweeted a couple of weeks back when he first signed for Leeds. and I know you retweeted it at the time. I think Dan James is going to do really, really well at Leeds. I really do. I think he's a good player. I think his abilities were underestimated by Manchester United because of the style of play that they play, because of the fact that, you know, what Manchester United fans expect, they want more. But I think with Leeds, with a proper manager and a proper coach, you know, and United fans that are watching this will disagree with me massively, but Bielsa is one of the best coaches in world football. You know, he's a very, very tuned in bloke who knows his football. And I think he can get the best out of Dan James, and I think he can be a real asset for Leeds going forwards.
100%, mate. I agree with every single word you said there. I think it's clear, right? It's quite funny because Rob Page, who's the Wales national manager, he was like, you'd think the way people are speaking, all these pros, like his international manager, they're actually more hyped that he's gone to Leeds United because they all understand and all know that his game's going to come on leaps and bounds, which shouldn't be the case, really. He's going from a top six side, one that will be challenging across all, you know, cups, or at least should be, to Leeds United. So, you know, naturally it shouldn't work like that. But it just shows how, let's say, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, regardless, man, listen, give me them players and Ronaldo and I'm winning a lot of games. That's facts. Do you know what I mean? I don't rate him at all. I think Dan James is going to have a man now who's going to coach him. Junior Firpo came in from Barcelona, and Junior Firpo did an interview and said, I've watched more video clips of my game in 2 weeks than I've ever done in my career. So know that Dan James is going to get that as well. You know, some people might not agree with that, but Bielsa's meticulous, man. He'll have watched all of Dan James. You know, it's just, I remember we were due to play Stoke, right, in the Championship. Nathan Jones had just got the job, and he was at Luton prior to that. And Bielsa went and watched Luton's games just so he could be prepared for, you know, and this is the kind of finite, minuscule details that this man goes to. So I think if you then do that for someone, Dan James, people forget as well, he's still only, 23? There's a long way for this kid's career to go. I think the main bits are there, and I just think with some proper coaching, you're going to see a proper player. And I think Man United fans, I think he got tarnished with Woodward a little bit for me. When things were going really bad and these signings were Dan James and nothing much else, and they were all green and gold and get him out, he was synonymous with that kind of situation, I think. Now, you know, Ronaldo's coming, and where's the green and gold, mate? Do you know what I mean? They're all buying the shirts again and that, aren't they?
Exactly. And, you know, when you think about it at face value, you know, it was only 3 months ago when they were getting the biggest game in, you know, English football cancelled because, you know, they were protesting against the owners, and now all of a sudden they brought Ronaldo in, they brought Varane in and Sancho in, and it's all quiet. But for me, you know, Dan James, I think he was one of the first signings of the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer era. He was a player that they never really warmed to, though. You know, you can see his quality at face value. You can see what he possesses. He's a fast player. You know, he's not the most technical player, but for me, he's a player that can be made into a very, very good footballer by Marcelo Bielsa, and he's a player that since Bielsa has come to England, he's been constantly obsessed with. I'd say, Joe. At first they were obsessed with bringing him in when it was the early days of Bielsa. Missed out on him, of course, on deadline day because of issues surrounding it. He ended up going to Manchester United. But I think the signing of him this summer has shown the obsession of Bielsa in Dan James. I think that should show, because I think anyone that's into football knows the ability of Marcelo Bielsa and knows how good of a football coach he is. And, you know, the obsession with Daniel James should show that there's a player there.
Yeah, 100% you bang on. It is so true. Like, let's not forget, Kalvin Phillips had never played DM, ever in his career. And the first, you know, Kalvin Phillips speaks about it. When Bielsa first met the squad, they were all in the dressing room. He walked round and put you're going to be playing defensive midfield. And he was like, what? And now look at him. He's playing for England. So he can see things that the normal human can, or normal football person can, because any manager up until that point had ever tried Kalvin in that position. So the fact Bielsa was able to do that from watching clips, you know what I mean, and able to come in and say, right, you're going to play there. So that shows how good this man is at his job in terms of, you know, spotting a player and knowing their qualities and how they should play, where they should play. So you're right, he has been obsessed since, you know, Spygate was when we first was found out, because when he did that presentation, on the screen behind him, there was a little folder that said Dan James. So everyone was like, yo, you see that folder? And then it all came out. So, and then obviously we couldn't sign him. And the fact that we've put down 25 million as well, it's like we put 3 bids within quick succession. I think a few other clubs were sniffing, but they knew as soon as it became available, Bielsa was like, I want that guy. So they had to just quick, acted fast. 25 million, some say we may be overpaid, but we needed to get him in, and Bielsa wanted him. And I can't wait for him to, you know, really get in the mix. But from a Liverpool perspective, if it is tight, 20 minutes, he gets thrown into the mix, gets put on Trent's side. You've got to think, well, I'm not having a go at Trent here, but all I'm saying is when he goes forward, there is a lot of space in behind to get at him, you know? So I think with his pace as well, he's going to cause all sorts of problems.
Yeah, no, I really think he'll do a lot better at Leeds United than he did at Manchester United, and I honestly think there is a real player there to be unlocked, and that's why, first of all, Manchester United were interested in him in the first place. That's why the obsession is there with Marcelo Bielsa. I just think, and again, Craig and Anfield Agenda has a lot of Manchester United followers, but you know, for me, I think that's where he's not been able to unlock, because I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a coach. He's not a coach, you know. He's not a top coach, whereas Bielsa really is. And you know, people talk about Mauricio Pochettino, who at the minute is definitely dealing with the best squad in world football at PSG, and expected to bring a lot in. He did such a good job at Spurs. And you know, he learned from Marcelo Bielsa, so that's all. You know, he's a top coach, and Leeds are very lucky to have him. So, yeah, I think Dan James will do very well with Leeds. I don't think it's something for Liverpool to worry about as far as time is concerned. I think he will be on the bench and come on for the last 20 minutes, as you say. He's not trained as much as, you know, Bielsa would have hoped that he has, but regardless, he's a real threat for Leeds going forwards. And to add to that, you know, you've got Rafinha, who I think a lot of Big Six clubs will be envious of the fact that you got him for just £16 million.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? It is mad. Like the business that's done at Leeds is sometimes it's a miss, but a lot of it's really, really good. Victor Orta is the reason for that. Our sporting director is fantastic at what he does. I mean, he was able to bring Bielsa to the club, you know. And like you said, Rafinha, I'm under no illusions, you know. Leeds need to be knocking on the door of Europe soon, otherwise he'll go, you know. And he will go to a club like a Liverpool, to, you know, a Manchester United, even if they was. I don't think they need anyone else now in them forward positions. So probably does leave the door open to Liverpool a little bit. I'm not for any second saying I want him to go or want him to be sold, but there will come a time if we don't progress. And I think it'll be a lot tougher this season for Leeds United than it was last. I still think we should have got a centre midfielder in, which I'd have been a lot more confident. We were supposed to get Conor Gallagher, but he chose Palace, and he'd been perfect for us because he's been class this season so far. He was amazing today. So we've got to keep progressing. Otherwise, what happens is obviously teams in Europe are going to come for these players. But 17 million, whatever we sell him for, you know, it's going to be a lot more than that. You know what I mean? 16, 17 million. For me, I'd be looking at, I'd want 50, 60, 70, you know, and that's where he's at now. If he had an even better season than last, then you're looking at, you know, it's crazy, the money. I know it sounds mad but the money that's been spent for the players, it's like, and again, it comes back to what he's worth to Leeds United as well. Do you know what I mean? He's a big star of ours, isn't he? So whatever, when he does go, because I think he will, you know, it'll be big money, and then we just need to make sure the players that we bring in are of a similar quality at a similar price, and we just keep growing that way. Because I think that's how Leeds United have to do it. A bit like Leicester. Gradual, bring in players, decent price, sell them on, go again, you know, because we don't have cash money like some of these other clubs in the division.
And we'll continue talking about Leeds before we move on to talk about the game as a whole. Joe, I'll ask you this: in terms of Leeds, what's your way of looking at this game? Who's the real threat from a Liverpool's perspective, and from a Leeds point of view? How do you beat us?
Oh, I don't know, Jack. I can't lie. Me and Oscar were talking about this the other day. It's going to be so tough. It is. Like, we haven't started the season the best either. And this is what I mean. At the minute, mood's a little bit like, because this time last season we had 6 points on the board. We'd played against you and played unreal. And although we lost that game, it was a game that everyone came out and was like, wow, Leeds are a team, you know. And then we went and won 2. But this season, it's just not really got going. I think midfield's a real concern for me because Rodrigo was brought in as a striker. Obviously, Bamford's just gone bam, 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 and he's played for England, and you're not getting past him, and nor should you because he deserves to start. So he's been deployed as a high 8, almost a 10, but like a high 8. But his pressing's just not up to it. His defending's just not up to it. And it's a little bit frustration because he was our record signing, and we thought, look, first season under Bielsa, it's always struggle for players because it takes a lot to get used to. He had long COVID last season, so you're thinking full preseason under his belt, his quality's there technically, he'll be ready to go, and he's just not started great, mate. He's been hooked at half-time. He started in the Crawley game in the Cup, hooked. Bamford came on 2 assists within 5 minutes, chalk and cheese, and it's like, I worry in that area. And I look at Liverpool, Van Dijk, I can just see Van Dijk and Matip just being able to like ghost up to the halfway as though, and I hope it's not like that, you know, but sometimes it can be. And obviously, I know it's mad to think who's your biggest threat, but I look at Van Dijk as being like a biggest threat, but he's a centre-back. Do you know what I mean? But he's just that good. And he's that good, and I just don't know. If I'm honest, I wish I could tell you how we beat you, but I just don't know. I'm not confident, bro. Going into the game, we need to exploit the fullbacks. I think, you know, Bielsa will have a plan. I look back to that game last season, first game of the season, balls into Kalvin, first time over the top, Jack Harrison when he did Trent. It was a beautiful goal. Something similar would be nice. But again, Leeds United are not an unknown entity anymore. Look at Kalvin doesn't get the space and time that he did in the early parts of the last season. I've noticed this season in the games we played, Patrick Bamford's getting special treatment. Yerry Mina wouldn't leave him alone. James Tarkowski wouldn't leave him alone. And I think there's a respect thing there now because people look at Patrick and go, okay, this guy can score goals and he can play. Whereas last season, there wasn't that. Genuinely, there wasn't. But I've noticed in the games we played, people are on him. Mina, genuinely, just all day. James Tarkowski, first 5 minutes, threw him, and he didn't really get a sniff. I know he scored, but it was a bit scrappy. So Patrick as well has got to find ways around that. And if you're going to come up against Matip and Van Dijk, it's going to be tough to do, man.
I think the thing is as well, obviously there were high expectations from Leeds going into the season. A lot of people had them, you know, challenging for Europe this season, Joe, based on last year, based on the fact that you've got, you know, a really good coach under your belt in Marcelo Bielsa. And for me, you know, I think, as you say, you know, the start of the season for Leeds, from a Leeds perspective, has been quite underwhelming. You know, you were smacked by Man United on the first game of the season. You've lost to Everton as well. And I think this will be a game where Leeds are looking to, you know, show the rest of the Premier League that they are what people were thinking at the start of the season.
Yeah, and I think the international break came at the right time for us. The international break came at the right time, really. Hopefully, you know, Bielsa will have got into them, although he hasn't really had an opportunity to because they've been on the international break. But yeah, I think a lot of it's to do with the summer, Jack. I think a lot of Leeds fans were saying push for Europe, but we were pretty quiet during the summer. Yeah, we brought Dan James in on deadline day, but just Firpo. We needed a midfielder. It's basically the same squad as last season. And in the Premier League, you've got to keep progressing. You've got to keep building. Because if you don't, then, there's only one way in it. You have a standstill or you regress. I look at the teams around us. I think for us to get top 10 this season would be huge, a huge achievement, because there's a lot of clubs that have done a lot of business that have made. I mean, look at Palace. Palace look different gravy today, and they've done some serious business. Villa have done some serious business. All right, it's not properly clicked in yet, but they'll be challenging for top 10. I know Arsenal have had a woeful start, but they'll be in. They're not going to get Europe, but they'll be in and around top 10 come the end. So I look at the positions.
That's crazy, by the way. That's crazy. That's
I know,
crazy.
but it is though, isn't it? They're going to be like from 7th to 10th kind of area, surely. I can't see them getting further. So top 7's probably boxed off, like with the usual suspects. So for us to get top 10 in and around like the likes of Everton, Villa, Palace, Arsenal, it'd be an achievement, bro. So to be honest, I'm thinking anywhere between 8th and 14th is where I have no concern about as bottom end. I just think, the noise coming out from the club is consolidation, mid-table, and then go again next year. So I think we expect a decent summer next time. It was more about, consolidating. We haven't got loads of money, bro, like some of the other clubs.
And obviously, keep your questions coming in the comments, because at the end of this video, we'll be referring to your questions. I'm going to continue asking Joe some questions ahead of the game. But any questions that you have about Leeds or about Liverpool, put it in the comments, and we will refer to at the end of the video. Joe, I'm going to ask you before we go into more detail about what's going to go in and out to the game and who to look at. We're going to talk more about, Kalvin Phillips and some threats for Liverpool as far as you're concerned. I want to get a score prediction from you. How do you see this game ending up?
I have to back my team. I always back my team. Like, it is what it is, even though sometimes I'm not. Do you know what? I don't know. Like last season, every fixture, I genuinely, we're going to win this game. This time I'm like, I'm going to back us, but I'm not so sure. I'm just not confident at this minute in time. But if we were to get a result, it'd be amazing. I am going to go for a 2-1 Leeds United win. I do think you will score. Look at him. He's shocked. I have to go. I have to go for the win, mate. I have to back the boys. Especially in a full Ellen Road. We can get a result, and we have to get a result, man. We need to start winning some games, and what better way to do it than against Liverpool?
Well, I'll give my score prediction now, and Joe, I don't know if you watch Anfield Agenda regularly. I don't know if you know what I usually go for with score predictions, but I rate Leeds. I think you're a top side. I think you're run by a top coach. I think it's going to be a difficult fixture, particularly, the fact that it's in front of a full Ellen Road. But I personally, I can't say anything other than a 6-0 win for Liverpool. I just that's just the feeling I get from this game. When I look at Liverpool versus Leeds, Super Sunday, 4:30, it screams to me 6-0. And for me, I rate Bielsa, I rate Leeds, but I think you're open at the back. And I think Liverpool Football Club will exploit that, and 6-0 seems like a decent.
It'll come in one day for you, mate, won't it? And then you'll be able to clip it. You'll be able to send it. I told you all.
Nah, but seriously, I do think there'll be a lot of people that look at this and look at the United game against Leeds and think that this is a big opportunity for Liverpool. But I don't think you can underestimate Leeds at all at any point. Bielsa is a top coach. As a football fan myself, he is someone that I am so fond of. Bielsa is a hero of mine. I think he's a top coach. I really do, and it's going to be a difficult game for us. It really is, and Ellen Road as well, a packed Ellen Road. It's your first big fixture in the Premier League at Ellen Road, and we can't underestimate you. And we've had a couple of injury problems during the international break. Van Dijk. In the last Holland game gave us, a bit of a worry. Harvey Elliott obviously pulled out of the England under 21 squad. We've had Naby Keita, who is, a soldier of war in Guinea after what's happened over there recently. It's going to be difficult. We've got Firmino out injured as well. So yeah, it's going to be a tough game and an interesting game, and one that I'm sure excites many. I think for the neutral, it's one that many are expecting a lot of goals in, Joe.
Yeah, I think so. I was saying that today actually in the Premier League because it was 0-0 in all the games except the Man United one till about the 70th minute, and I was like saying, well, at least tomorrow the Premier League will be like we'll get goals. I mean, I even said like we might be on the end of a hiding, but at least there'll be goals. I think that's one thing for sure, Jack. I just don't see it being a 0-0. I just can't see it. I take confidence in the fact we were the only team last season to not be beat at home by the Super Six teams, which were all the best teams and Arsenal and Tottenham. But I think. Did you like that? I thought it was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, there will be goals. There will be goals. What I think I will say, we can't concede early. We've got to get the first goal for me. Make a real game. Because if you get the goal early, the noise, the crowd, yeah. Whereas if we can get it early doors and we're pressing, challengers flying in. Because one thing, this new rule change that's come in where they're letting games go a little bit. I mean, Burnley are getting away with murder. They did against us. I think they did against you. But it also helps Leeds a little bit because we press so aggressively. There'd be a lot of times last season where Kalvin would win the ball and the ref would blow up for nothing. And it's just like, so it does help us in that respect. But yeah, we need to score, mate. We need to score pretty early. And I think if we can, the noise will be bouncing then. And then it'll be hard for Liverpool. Although you're a fantastic side, don't get me wrong. I just think if you score, yourself, it can dampen a crowd, especially when it's such a big occasion. The Everton one, it sort of passed me by a little bit. I can't lie, because it was more a case of, I'm just back in the football ground with all my friends. The result didn't really matter that day. Do you know what I mean? We got a point. It was 2-2, but it didn't really matter. But tomorrow's, it's like, nah, we've had that now. We're back in Ellen Road. It's game time. Let's start getting some wins on the board. So I think it's going to be important. But there will be goals, mate. Yeah, I'm expecting a great football game, just in general. 2 great coaches, 2 great teams who will go at it. None of this 11 men behind the ball. Let's, go at it.
And I want to talk a lot about that more in a moment, Joe. But one thing I want to talk about at the moment is Kalvin Phillips. Because for me, he's a top player. I don't know if anyone's seen the TikTok from England recently, but he was given, Player of the Year for England last year. Really, really impressed at the Euros when many thought that, he wouldn't get much game time. And for me, I think he screams Liverpool Football Club in terms of a player. And you'll hate me saying this, Joe. I know you well. I know you very well, and I know Kalvin Phillips for you is Leeds born and bred, and I know you probably hope that he'll be there for a very long time. But he's a quality footballer, and there's going to be top clubs interested in him. That's for sure, especially with how well he's doing for England. But for me, he suits Liverpool so much, and I look at Jordan Henderson and where he's at in his career, and our interest in Jude Bellingham and stuff like that. But there wouldn't be a better option for us than looking at Kalvin Phillips. I'm right, aren't
I? No, listen, I'm not delusional. I know that Kalvin's a fantastic player. Him and Rafinha are going to have offers on the table next summer, as long as if they continue in the form that they will. You can't go from playing so well in the European Championships to then be. Let's be honest. I know you guys won't want to hear this now. He's ahead of Henderson, whether you agree or disagree. He's ahead of Henderson in the England pecking order. You might not agree on the football pitch, and that's fine, and I understand that. But what I'm saying is he's now got himself ahead of the starting midfielders are Rice and Phillips. It is what it is. You will disagree with that, Liverpool fans, and I get that, and I understand it, and you can. But what I'm saying is, for him to be an England regular, he's then got to be competing at the top of the Premier League. He knows that as well. So for me, this is why the window, a lot of fans like consolidate. It's got to be constant progression, because what happens is if Leeds just miss out on Europe and then we start to spend in the summer, then you can have a conversation with a Kalvin and a Rafinha to say, We're going places. We had a decent finish. We're going to go again. Bielsa's going to stay. If we have a really poor season, then can the players see the end goal? It's like with Kalvin. I think we'll keep him longer than we will Rafinha because, look, when we didn't get up the first season in the Championship under Bielsa, he stayed another year and there were offers on the table from Villa. He was close to moving but said, no, I'll give you one more season. And I think it'll be a similar sort of situation where next summer, if we're not quite at Europe, it'll be, let's give us another push. I mean, let's take Declan Rice. If West Ham would have not got Europe last season, he wouldn't be at that football club no more. He wouldn't be there. And I've said this before, bro. I agree with you. I look at Man City, Fernandinho. I look at Liverpool, Henderson. He seems to me to be a natural successor. I think Declan Rice will go to Chelsea or Man United, but Kalvin seems to be a natural successor for a Henderson. I had this conversation with the lads on the Trippers, Grizz, and he said, nah, because he was like, nah, I don't rate Kalvin as much. And I was a bit surprised. But obviously, I'm always going to back my boy, but I want him to stay at Leeds United forever. But I'm not I'm not dissolute. Like, if we don't progress, he's going to go in.
I don't know Grizz that well, and I know he's a person that, in terms of Liverpool Football Club, a lot of people rely on. But for me, I say this constantly: if you don't rate Kalvin Phillips, you don't know football. I think he's a top player. I really do. Yeah. He's got a bit of everything. And, he showed that with England. He's shown that with Leeds in terms of the roles that he can play there. I really rate him. I really do. And I think he's the natural successor for Henderson. And though obviously everyone looks at Jude Bellingham and he's the main man for me. He's the man I want to see Liverpool bring in. But, I look at midfield, and if Liverpool bring in Bellingham and Kalvin Phillips, that is an incredible midfield.
Thing is with Bellingham as well, he's going to cost major coin. When he moves on from Dortmund, he is going to cost loads. He will come back to England. It seems to be the natural thing now. These young kids, they go to Germany, they come back. And Dortmund, they probably know that. Dortmund, let's get these kids in. They were looking at, was it Hudson-Odoi or was that Munich? I can't remember. But they get these kids in really young. They let them, prosper in the German league at a decent level. And then, then they come back, right? They come back, and I think that's the thing as well. Have Liverpool got the funds to be doing a Bellingham on a serious level when he's available? I'm not sure, because I think he'll go for crazy money, and so he should. The kid's a baller. The kid, and by the way, as well, just on this actually, on his Instagram story today, ask Bellingham. Jude Bellingham was asked, who's the most difficult player you've played against? And his answer was Kalvin Phillips. He put a picture of him and Kalvin in the Championship, Birmingham versus Leeds. So that tells you how good he is, because he's playing he played in the Champions League, bro, last season. He played in that, was it against PSG? Were they knocked out against PSG? He played in that game, and he's saying that Kalvin's is the most difficult competitor. So those that don't rate him, just see what...
I don't think he did play against PSG. He played against City, but nonetheless...
That was it, City, sorry. City. But there you go.
Yeah. It's still, I really rate Kalvin Phillips. So I know there's a lot of people out there that don't, but for me, I'm a big Kalvin Phillips fan. And, I think personally, comparing him to Jordan Henderson, there's not many successors to Jordan that we can bring in. And like you say, Bellingham's going to cost us an absolute fortune, and Phillips, I think, is a good alternative to look at. But nonetheless, Joe, I want us to dissect Liverpool right now, and more so our business in the summer. There's plenty of people watching now who won't be happy with our business in the summer. Chelsea strengthened massively. They didn't need to strengthen much. They're incredibly, effective under Thomas Tuchel. They brought in Lukaku, who is a massive coup for them. City obviously spent £100 million on
100 quid. Imagine 100 quid.
£100 million on Jack Grealish, and then United did the business we obviously know. I don't know if they've announced it about 20 million times. Yeah. Ronaldo in. So Liverpool, we bought Konate in early doors, But after that, we didn't really do anything. And do you think that, it is a dangerous move from Liverpool? Do you think our rivals are sort of, accelerating ahead of us?
Yeah, mate, I do. And I say this all the time, like when I do my preview show on Before the Whistle Blows. As a Liverpool fan, I feel that you have every right to be frustrated, because I look at the season that, you'd won the Champions League, you then win the Premier League. For me, you had an opportunity there to really invest and dominate for a period of time. That's what it felt like. That was the window of opportunity. Then next, COVID, injuries, and for you to finish top four was still an achievement in itself, based on who you were playing at centre back. That Kabak's playing at bloody Norwich now, innit? And do you know what I mean? This is what we're talking about level wise, and you still finished in the top four. It's quite funny because I remember Liverpool fans were, "There's a player in Kabak. He's playing at Norwich now." But this is the fickle nature of football fans, of course. I get it, but I do think, and you have every reason to be frustrated, because you got Konate in, and I think it's a decent signing. But you had a chance, you had an opportunity, and what you've done is allowed the rest to catch up and then get ahead of you. No one's talking about Liverpool as winners, and they should be. And I think, and I even say this, it's a little bit frustrating when I hear people say, Liverpool might drop out. No, they won't drop out of the top four. Let's not forget, they haven't done as much business, but they still have a great side, because the players that have come back from injury, your Van Dijks, etc., Matip, etc., they make that team just instantly better, instantly better. But I do think more needs to be done. I think someone put it in the chat about Leeds. I've had this before where Leeds fans are now starting to sound like Liverpool fans and say, next season it's coming, next season. But yeah, you have every reason, if you are on the, I don't know, is it FSG out in? I don't know, but you have every reason to be annoyed regardless, because you just need a bit of cash and you'd be just better.
I think that's the thing, I'm the perfect example of a Liverpool fan who, I was born in '99, in an era that wasn't really successful for Liverpool Football Club, but I was blessed with Steven Gerrard. That got me through my childhood. I'm a fan that's not from Liverpool. So I constantly got, you're a glory hunter and stuff. And growing up, I constantly said, glory hunter, there's fucking no glory being a Liverpool fan in this era. And, I think for me, then when we started to get our glory back, we under FSG, where we're on the brink of administration under Hicks and Gillette, we were, getting rid of Alonso, and our top target was Gareth Barry to replace him. And then to get to the point where we won the Champions League. John Henry went to Sky Sports that we were going to bring people in. Then that summer we brought in Sepp van der Berg as our most expensive signing. We went on to win the Premier League the next season, so it didn't really matter. But after that, in terms of investment, it's been very much limited, Joe. And as you say, it was a window of opportunity for Liverpool Football Club to stamp our authority on the rest of English football. Us and Manchester United are the biggest clubs in England. I think that's undoubted. City, Chelsea, with their money are rivaling that. And if you look at history, you've got yourselves, Nottingham Forest, Villa, who are big clubs as well, because you won European Cups, which can't be said for Manchester City. But nonetheless, I think it's very difficult because we're looking at things at face value. It was a disappointing summer from Liverpool, and we've been told season by season that Liverpool are looking at generational talents, and again, it's been a summer where we brought in Konate, and for me, we're not necessarily strengthened. We've got rid of Shaqiri. Our problem last season was breaking down low block teams. We were good against teams like Leeds that were open and would come for a game of football, but it was against Burnley, Brighton, teams like that where we struggled, and we're not strengthened in the forward area to compete against sides like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It must be frustrating. I'm just having a look at the comment there saying that Jude's worth nowhere near 80 million, 35 to 40. Not a chance, bro. if he's available for 40 million, Leeds go do him, man. He's worth money. I genuinely think that kid will go for upwards of 100. Genuinely, when he's available, because he won't. You got a few more seasons yet, but that kid's different gravy. Anyway, sorry, I digress. But yeah, no, it must be frustrating, mate. You have every reason to be. It was for me as a Leeds United fan on the cusp of Europe last season, thinking, bit more cash, let's go again. Yous have won a league title, and there genuinely was an opportunity. Like the guys just mentioned in the chat, you've lost Gini Wijnaldum as well. Thiago's not really worked, which is still a surprise. I don't know if it will. It might be just one of them where you have to go, unfortunately, it's just not worked. Because, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? What's the situation?
I think for me, Joe, I think there's no doubt Thiago Alcantara is a world class player, but whether he fits the system is a different conversation. I think there's been times like the back end of last season he was top class for us. He's carried us to the situation we're in now. There were so many games last season where he didn't have an impact, and for a world class player, that's what you expect. But for me, I have a mate who is a very, very good coach. He's a Manchester City fan. He doesn't rate Thiago. And, we constantly have conversations, debates, arguments about Thiago because I'm a big fan of his. And he says, he's more of a futsal player and stuff like that. But, I think the situation is the way that Klopp likes his midfield to run, with Robbo and Trent as our fullbacks. It's got to be very, very particular. And I think Thiago is his own person. He's so good. He's so world class that he brings a different element. He brings a different game. And I think though he's world class and though it's worked at times, he's not necessarily Jurgen Klopp. And, I think he could be a key player at times still. I think, I'm looking at the Chelsea game where obviously I think we deserved the 3 points that game, but we didn't quite do enough to get those 3 points. And Chelsea, for me, are going to be the side that go on to win the league this season. They're incredibly effective under Thomas Tuchel. And for me, you look at them at face value and how we were going to break them down in the second 45 minutes of that game with 10 men. And I would have liked to see Thiago earlier than he was brought on, but he was brought on when he was. He didn't make too much of an impact. There was a quote in the Liverpool Echo this week, Joe, where it was said that it was the right signing but the wrong time. And I disagree with that. I'd say it was, I think it was, though it was a very good signing for Liverpool. He's a world-class player. He's a sort of player that Liverpool fans have been looking to bring in for a long time. We want a world-class player brought into Liverpool Football Club. But I think it was the right time to bring in someone like that. But I think it was the wrong player to match our system. Because though Thiago is top class and would make it in many Premier League clubs, and we saw at the end of last season the impact that he can bring in certain games and stuff like that. But I think in terms of all games in Premier League football, he's not a player that's capable of that. And I know that there's a lot of Liverpool fans, a lot of football fans that would disagree with me in that. But I'm a massive fan of Thiago Alcantara. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think it was the right signing for Liverpool. And though I say this because I know that, if he starts at the weekend, he's a player that I admire. He's a player that I love watching and can in that game against Leeds, impact us and benefit us. But in the Premier League, 38 games a season, 38 physical games a season, I don't think he's the man.
It is interesting hearing you say that because I know they're not anywhere similar, although they're both Spanish internationals. Rodrigo, when we brought Rodrigo in, he was Spain's number 9. That's a huge signing for Leeds United, He broke our transfer record. And I think an opportunity arose him to come to the, and it was just too good for Leeds United to turn down at the price that it was. However, within hindsight, you look back and think, was he actually the right man for our team and our system? And I think there's a lot to be said about that, mate. So you're probably right. It's clearly Thiago's a fantastic player, but it's just not quite worked, has it? Much like Rodrigo at Leeds, and I hope it does work. And there's still time yet in there, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it's a bit of a mad one. Look at Lukaku at Manchester United. Then he's gone away, smashed it in, come back to the Premier League, and he looks like, for me, he'll get the Golden Boot. You know, I know Ronaldo might have something to say about that, but I think Lukaku's already off to a great start. Got 2 goals today. Lukaku puts that's what I mean about the Premier League as well. Like last week, that game didn't become, for me as a neutral, it didn't become Liverpool-Chelsea. It was Lukaku versus Van Dijk. I was like, I cannot wait for this. Like Lukaku as a player, I'm not looking forward to him coming up against our centre-backs, man. But you just pin them there, both of them like that, seeing a bit. But yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or I just spoke about Thiago. I went on to Lukaku, then I'm sorry, but yeah.
No, but I agree with what you say there in terms of you know the key players in the Premier League, and I'll talk about another key player now in Virgil van Dijk. Bamford is a player that has defied belief. Many wrote him off when Leeds first came up. He was Bielsa's main man in the Championship, and many were shocked because obviously you had Eddie Nketiah on loan. And Bielsa gave the nod to his main man in the Premier League as well. Last season, it was a brilliant season for him. And, this year, he's looking for those numbers again. But you're looking at Liverpool versus Leeds. Are you worried again about him against Virgil van Dijk?
Oh, Bamford, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Anyone coming up against Virgil van Dijk, I mean, he showed... I think for me, he's the only one really who can deal with Lukaku in that little physical battle. I know people are mentioning Salah in the chat and that, and I get that, but they're just different players, aren't they? We're on about different players. But, yeah, like I said, Bamford's had a little bit of special treatment, it seemed. He's been focused on a lot more. Yerry Mina did it, Tarkowski did it, and Van Dijk's levels above them. So I think he's going to have his work cut out tomorrow. But I do remember him beating him and scoring a lovely goal when we played you last season at the start of the season. So he's done it one before. All right, Van Dijk might have slipped, but I'm still saying it's Bamford's excellent movement that made him slip. But yeah, look, Bamford's had a good start to the season, although, he's only got 1 goal. He's played well. But anyone coming up against Van Dijk, it's going to be tough, innit? Let's be honest.
And I want to talk about, kind of put it here. Joe, what's your thoughts on Meslier? I think Meslier is a top keeper, very young. I think there's a mistake in him, but I think he's a very top keeper nonetheless. Yeah,
I think he'll be France's number 1. I do. I think he'll take over from Lloris. He's currently number 1 for the under-21s. Although he had a howler during the international break against the Faroe Islands. But look, I see him week in, week out. There is a lot of fans that don't rate him. They have this impression that he makes a lot of mistakes, but can only really remember the 2 last season, 1 against Arsenal, 1 against Spurs. He actually broke the record for the most clean sheets for someone under the age of 21 last season. Joe Hart was it prior. What's going off here? I think these two are having an argument in the chat, guys. The comments and right, so Craig's right, okay. What's going on here? I'm having a conversation with three people from the Anfield agenda. It's a bit of an head blag. But no, Meslier is a fantastic keeper. Will keep a clean sheet tomorrow, even though I've said it's 2-1. But you asked the question, he's better than Alisson. I'm joking, but he's a great keeper.
Yeah, he's a top keeper, don't get me wrong. And I think I remember going into the Anfield game last season, first game of last season. And, I think it was everyone was shocked that Meslier got the nod that day, and he let 4 in on his Premier League debut. But since then, he's defied belief, and he's been a top goalkeeper. And many that people have got their eye on, very young. Obviously, France wanted him in their squad for the Olympics, but Bielsa defied that. And he's definitely a player that a lot will have their eye on.
Yeah, well, PSG have made inquiries about him before. They've actually contacted the club, and it's been told no, flat out no. Chelsea tried to sign him from Lorient a couple of seasons ago before he broke through there. So it's clear he has a lot of talent. Again, he's one of them, Jack, that I look at and think he will go to a big club for a lot of money in a few seasons. We only paid $5 million for him. $5 million. And keepers are not cheap if they're of a decent quality. So I think, again, he's another one that will go for big money. Unless we continue to progress and keep him forever. It is what it is. We've got to see where we're at as a football club. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, a bit of a sidetrack thing here, Joe, because I'm going away from Liverpool and Leeds. Who do you think is going to win the league this season?
Chelsea. Chelsea, mate. I think before the transfer window shut, I was on City. But obviously, they failed to sign Kane. Then the Ronaldo situation happened. But the fact that Chelsea have brought in Lukaku, it's just taken them up another notch. They brought in Saul. For me, they have the best midfield options in the league. They don't, not saying they have it overall, but in terms of options, you know, you've got Saul, Jorginho, Kovacic, Kante. That's levels. Do you know what I mean? In terms of options, they've got a great coach. I think Chelsea, man, and I don't like Chelsea, but yeah, I think it will be Chelsea. I even think they might reclaim the Champions League. You know, I don't get on all this PSG because they've signed Messi. I just don't see it happening. I don't, and I don't want it to happen either. I don't want them to win it. Don't like them.
I think from my perspective, I completely agree with you. I think Chelsea are going to run away with the league. I've even had a bet myself, and this is going to cause a lot of problems, I'm sure. But I've had a bet on Chelsea going invincible this season because, you know, from my perspective, Joe, they are incredibly effective. They're a side that are so hard to break down. We showed that with, you know, we played against 10 men for a whole 45 minutes. We're one of the best sides, you know, in the league, and we put our best side out, and we struggled to break Chelsea down. We really did, and that was Chelsea with 10 men, and you know, 11 versus 11. Yes, it was a more open game, and yes, in the first half we were probably the better side. But if you think about it, other than that penalty situation, Chelsea still managed to go 1-0. They're a side that is so effective under Thomas Tuchel, which is why they ended up winning the Champions League last season. And they brought Lukaku in, which for me was the perfect signing for me. You know, there was talk of Haaland and stuff like that. But when you talk about the player that they needed, Romelu Lukaku was that kind of player. He was that stereotype in terms of that typical number 9 that Chelsea like. And you know, for me, I think Chelsea are a top side and one to keep an eye out for this season. I honestly think, you know, they're a side that Premier League teams are really going to struggle to beat because Thomas Tuchel has set them up as a side that are almost impossible to defeat. And for me, I think they'll win the Premier League for sure. But thank you for joining me for this, Joe. You know, I always love having you on this show. And if you don't know Joe Wayman, make sure you check him out. Obviously all this stuff is in the description below. He's a top bloke, and his content is always class. Whether you're a Liverpool fan, whether you're a Leeds fan, whether you're a Chelsea fan, whether you're a United fan, whatever you support, he's a great bloke and he covers football all over. So yeah, thank you, Joe, for joining us for this. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you join Craig for his tomorrow. But yeah, shout out to Craig, shout out to Joe. We'll see you very soon. Up the Reds. Hopefully it's 6-0 tomorrow. It will be 6-0. Let's go. And you know what? Rehan has put this up now, and I will confirm this. If Liverpool win the league this season, I won't only go bald, but I'll manscape the whole of my body. and that's how we'll go. So yeah, we'll move on from there. Thank you, Joe, for joining us. We will see you very soon.